On the range today with the old Western cartridge, 45 Colt. As you can see, we're going to test through the Ruger Alaskan 2-inch barrel. So we're going to see what the terminal ballistics are of the Sig Sauer 45 Colt V-Crown 230 grain jacketed hollow point out of a short barrel, and then also out of a 6-inch 1 in 700 made 45 Colt from Smith & Wesson. We're going to test the 45 Colt 230 grain against the Buffalo Bore. Buffalo Bore is branded as 45 Colt anti-personnel, standard pressure, low flash cartridge. We're going to see which one delivers ballistics to be the ultimate animal and two-legged predator stopping round.
825. 822. 803. 840. 848.
Results from the Smith & Wesson 625 6-inch ported barrel with the Sig Sauer 230 grain 45 Colt V-Crown ammunition. Number of shots, 5. Minimum, 803 feet per second. Maximum, 848 feet per second. Spread, 45 feet per second. The average, 827 feet per second. And the standard deviation of 16. Smith & Wesson 625 45 Colt Buffalo Bore 225 grain anti-personnel cartridge.
1020. 1009. 1006. 1006. 1038.
That Buffalo Bore, wow. Drilled one hole from 10 yards back. Now we're going to move on to the Ruger Alaskan. Buffalo Bore anti-personnel round from the Smith & Wesson 625 6-inch ported barrel. Number of shots, 5. Minimum, 1,006 feet per second. Maximum, 1,038 feet per second. A spread of 32 feet per second, turning in an average of 1,015 feet per second with a standard deviation of 12 and a power factor average of 228. Moving on to the 2-inch short barrel Ruger Alaskan 454 colossal and 45 Colt. Today we're going to be shooting the 45 Colt 230 grain Sig Sauer ammunition.
740. 737. 706. 720. 744.
Seems like with the Ruger Alaskan, which is to be expected, we lost quite a bit of velocity. We're going to move on to the buffalo bore now. It did group pretty well downrange from 10 yards. Sig Sauer, 45 Colt, V-Crown, 230 grain ammunition. We did lose 98 feet per second out of the Ruger Alaskan compared to the 6-inch barrel of the Smith & Wesson 625. The Ruger Alaskan in 5 shots turned in a minimum of 706 feet per second, a maximum of 744 feet per second, with a spread of 38 feet per second for an average of 729 feet per second and a standard deviation of 14, turning in a power factor average of 167. Still quite respectable for the old 45 Colt. Stay tuned, folks. Don't go anywhere for the clear ballistics gel test. Moving on to the Ruger Alaskan with the buffalo bore 45 Colt anti-personnel. Buffalo bore developed this round to be the two-legged predator stopper. So we're going to shoot it across the chronograph out of this 2-inch barrel. Then we're going to compare the 2-inch barrel and the 6-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 625, if I don't run out of daylight, folks, in the clear ballistics gelatin.
$942. 911. 891. 899. 925.
I gotta say, folks, this Ruger Alaskan handled the buffalo bore anti-personnel round with ease. Both the buffalo bore and the Sig Sauer ammunition shot really soft in such a heavy pistol. Great backwoods pistol, stoked with 454. It's a little bit tougher to handle, but of course, we all know why the Alaskan was developed. There's a reason it has the name Alaskan. So now moving on to the clear ballistics gelatin. Ruger Alaskan, buffalo bore 45 Colt. The short barrel of the Ruger Alaskan lost about 102 feet per second over the 6-inch barrel of the Smith & Wesson 625. The Alaskan in 5 shots turned in a minimum of 891 feet per second, a maximum of 942 feet per second, with a spread of 51 feet per second, an average of 913 feet per second, and a standard deviation of 18, with a power factor average of 205. Still not something I would want to be confronted with. Let's move on to the clear ballistics gelatin test. Moving on to the clear ballistics gelatin. Up first, the Smith & Wesson 625 with the Sig Sauer 230 grain V-Crown ammunition. Great shot, right down the center of the block. Let's see how it expanded. So it went in at the center of the block, right there. Pretty gnarly wound cavity. Goes down. This is out of the 6-inch barrel. Stops at about 15 to 16 inches, folks. We'll dig that out a little bit later for you and weigh it, see what the weight retention is. But next up is going to be the buffalo bore out of the 625. Woo! That bone crusher got plenty of penetration. Let's take a look, folks. As to be expected with a wad cutter, take a look at that entry hole. Wow. There's a reason Buffalo Bore calls it the anti-personnel stopper. But as you can see there, between the comparison of the wound cavities, the wound cavity on the Sig and the Buffalo Bore wad cutter seems to be about the same. But there's definitely greater penetration with the full wad cutter. There is the 230 out of the Smith & Wesson 625. And then we move on down the line, and goodness gracious, that's where that wad cutter comes to rest. I would say it's a little over 20 inches of penetration for 45 Colt, folks. 45 Colt, 225 grain. We'll dig that out and weigh it once we get back to the lair. Next up, range fans, is the Ruger Alaskan with the Sig 230 grain V-Crown. This is going to be some interesting results. Let's get a closer look at the ballistics gel. So the third hole right here is where the Alaskan entered the ballistics gel. With a 230 grain Sig, you can see the wound cavity is about the same between all three so far. Travel down the block. There is the first out of the 625, I'm sorry folks, the 625 Smith & Wesson. That's the first round fired from a 6-inch. What's interesting about these results, the 2-inch Alaskan got about 2 more inches of penetration. It'll be interesting to see which one opened up the most. Try to get you a good shot. But there it is. Here, you have the Smith & Wesson 625 right there. Greater velocity out of that round. And then you move to the Ruger Alaskan, which we lost a little velocity and had deeper penetration. Let's move on to the Buffalo Bore out of the Alaskan and see what the results are. And again, folks, we'll take all of these out, weigh them for you, and we'll even take some measurements of the ballistics gel before we leave the range today, but I am losing daylight. Stay tuned. Ruger Alaskan with the Buffalo Bore 225 grain anti-personnel cartridge. Those Buffalo Bore wad cutters leave some tremendous damage, and the entry is just, wow, amazing. There's the Alaskan. I can almost stick my finger in that wound. Full wad cutter. We're going to go around this side of the block because it's a little bit clearer on this side, and you can see what the wound tracks look like. Pretty devastating. I'm not advocating in any kind of a way that I would carry either one of these pistols for personal protection. Maybe in backwoods country, probably so. You can see there, this is the first shot, Smith & Wesson 625, 230 grain Sig. Then we have the second shot, or the first shot from the Ruger Alaskan 230 grain Sig. It actually got deeper penetration. And then it follows along, and we lost out the side of the block, the Ruger Alaskan 225 grain buffalo bore came out the side of the block. But again, the Smith & Wesson 625 has the deepest penetration with the buffalo bore 225 grain load. We'll take another shot here with a Ruger Alaskan to see if we could try to capture that bullet in the gel to see what it weighs afterwards. Last and final shot with the Ruger Alaskan and the buffalo bore 225 grain anti-personnel 45 Colt. We're going to see if we can try to capture this round in the ballistics gel for weight comparison amongst the others. Fifth and final shot right here. Ruger Alaskan, look at that hole. Those wadcutters are mean. There's a reason they call them anti-personnel rounds. There you go. You get a close-up there of all the wound tracks. Pretty devastating, and then starts to thin out. But the Ruger Alaskan with the buffalo bore ammunition really shocks me considering the loss of velocity. But here you have the 625 Colt, the 625 Smith & Wesson buffalo bore round, 6-inch barrel, folks, and then the Ruger Alaskan round about an inch, inch and a half, trailing that round. That's pretty interesting considering the tail of the tape of the chronograph. Stay tuned for the weight measurements of each round. Tail of the tape, range fans. Here we go. That is the first shot right there from the Smith & Wesson 625 45 Colt, 230 grain Sig Sauer ammunition V-Crown, 15 inches. Then we travel a little bit further, and the forward leading edge of the 230 grain V-Crown 45 Colt ammunition out of the Alaskan at 18 inches from the forward edge. Then we travel a little bit further downrange, and there you have that buffalo bore 225 grain from the Ruger Alaskan with the forward edge touching right there at about 25 inches. And then the last shot there out of the Smith & Wesson 625 225 grain buffalo bore achieves 27 inches of penetration. Range fans, we want you to stay tuned for the weight measurements of each of these bullets. 45 Colt from the Sig Sauer ammunition and also from the buffalo bore ammunition. Another great day on the range. Short day on the range. A little bit rushed on this video due to running out of daylight. But folks, hang in there with me as we deliver the weight measurements along with the velocity measurements from the chronograph. Range fans, is the 45 Colt as useful today as when carried by the likes of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday during the Old West? This cartridge was designed in 1872, and the Granddaddy 45 Colt cartridge exists today because it is powerful and meant for handgun hunting and just as useful for two-legged predator protection. If you are a fan of the 45 Colt, please subscribe and leave a comment below and tell me how you utilize the 45 Colt in the 20th century. Mr. Revolver Guy, DayAtTheRange.com.